Salvete discípuli, soy el Tutorísimo, tu profesor favorito, y en el vídeo de hoy vamos a hablar sobre the economic activity. And for that purpose we are going to use these fantastic notes with Raúl and also a wonderful presentation that I'm going to show you right now. Both things, notes and presentations, are available for you for downloading in your virtual classroom. Let's go. Boom! Unit 1, the economic activity, with our beloved shopping mall in Rivas, el H2 Socio. So, what is the economic activity? What are we we're going to talk about in this unit? We're going to talk about the economic activity and all of its characteristics. First, what is it? Then the economic systems, and finally, what are the main economic areas around the world. So first, the economic activity. What is it? The economic activity is the production, distribution and consumption of goods. And goods can be both products and services. This is not a very accurate way of representing it, but all goods are both products and services. I should change this presentation. And all of them have the goal of satisfying all the human needs. All human needs can be very, very different. Food, clothes, social security, communication, leisure, housing, etc. etc. The products are goods which are obtained directly from nature, are goods that you can touch. But on the other hand, the services are activities, and activities carried out by humans to benefit society. So, for example, you satisfy your need of food with goods, with food which are products. Also, clothes the same. But, for example, the transport or the education and culture are satisfied, those needs are satisfied by certain activities. For example, this with schools, and communication with the internet connection, and health with the activity of a doctor. So, what are the steps of the economic activity? We said production, distribution and consumption. So in this system we have some inputs, the raw materials, and after the production they come out as manufactured goods, and those goods have to be distributed to the points where they can be sold and where they can be consumed. So the three steps of the economic activity are production, distribution and consumption. Then we have the factors of production. What are those? Those are the resources that are required for the generation of economic goods. So are the elements that the economic activity needs in order to be carried out. As you can see here, all the inputs available to supply goods and services in an economy. All of them are valid definitions for the factors of production. And usually we have the factors of production are divided in the Anglo-Saxon world in four types: land, labor, capital and enterprise. But for us, we are only going to focus on the first three: the land, the labor and the capital. And in your notes you have in your book they are named as natural resources, which is this land, which are all the materials or the elements provided by nature, and they can be renewable, for example the solar energy, the wind or the water, and non-renewable. They eventually will run out, such as, for example, any kind of fossil fuels, for example coal or petroleum. Then we have the labor, and in your notes it is called human resources. That it's the same. It's the people who exploit and convert natural resources into economic goods. It's the labor of people. It's the workforce. In order to carry out the economic activity, you need people to perform it. Without people, there is no economic activity. So you need labor, you need workforce. And finally, the capital, which is the opposite of this, the natural resources, all the non-natural elements that you need to carry out this economic activity. All the materials, all the techniques, and mostly all the financial resources, money or technology or machinery, etc. For example, to plant tomatoes, you need first land to plant tomatoes, you need the seeds of the tomatoes, you need the sunlight, you need water to water the plants, and all of these fall within this category, the natural resources. Then you need labor, you need peasants to take care of the tomatoes, to plant the seeds, to water them, and to harvest them when they have grown up. And finally, you need capital, you need money to buy the land, you need money to buy the seeds, and you need money to pay the workforce, and also you need the machinery, the harvesters or the seeders or whatever machinery you are using in agriculture, and you also need the technology, you need the knowledge, you need how tomatoes are planted. So if any one of these are missing, there is no economic activity. Then we have the economic sectors. The economic sectors are groups of economic activities, and they are grouped according what is produced by each one of them. Traditionally, we have three economic sectors: the primary sector, the secondary sector, and the tertiary sector. The primary sector involves activities that are related to extracting natural resources. For example, agriculture, livestock, fishing, forestry, and mining. These are the ones we are going to study in the next unit. The secondary sector involves activities regarding to converting these raw materials obtained by the primary sector, these natural resources, into manufactured products. So it's the industrial sector. And also the building sector, the housing and infrastructure sector. This one, the secondary. And finally, the tertiary sector, it groups all the activities that provide services. For example, banking, health services, retail stores, food services, education, and a lot more of activities. This is perhaps, well, in the developed countries, this is the most important sector. And here you have some examples: the primary, fishing, farming, mining; manufacturing or secondary sector, a car factory, a brewery where beer is made, a flour mill; and finally services such as banking, retail shops, or restaurants. They all provide services. They are all activities. And some pictures. This is harvesting, agriculture, primary sector; livestock farming, cows, moo; primary sector, moo; fishing, primary sector; logging or wood cutting, primary sector; mining, primary sector, although in your book it is placed in the secondary sector, but I consider it to be part of the primary sector. Car factory, secondary sector, they're transforming products. This is housing, which falls into the secondary sector. This is the hospital next to the Metro de Rivas, Futura. Pencil factory, secondary sector. And finally, the prison, which is the part of the tertiary sector. The hospital, tertiary sector. Services and transport, the transport of goods lays within also the tertiary sector. This is the dock of Shanghai. Las Vegas, here you have gambling and tourism, tertiary sector. And as you can see, this is the distribution of the economic sectors in the world, more or less. And the dominant sector is the tertiary sector, followed by the secondary sector, and lastly the primary sector. Then we have the economic agents. What are them? Are the subjects in charge of carrying out the economic activity. Are the who carries out the economic activities, the economic agents. And the relationship between these three economic agents form the so-called economic circuit. So first, which are these agents? We have the companies or businesses, the private sector, which are the basic units of production of economic goods. They produce the goods, they distribute them, and they sell them to the consumers. The consumers are the families, we, the people. and we are the basic units of consumption. We consume all the goods provided by the businesses. And finally, we have the state or government, which is also called the public sector. And from an economic point of view, the state is both a producer and a consumer. So how do these three agents relate to each other? Very easy. Both businesses and families pay taxes to the state or to the government, to the state better. And in exchange, the state provides services for both businesses and families, such as infrastructure or public services, such as education, healthcare, security, etc. And how do families and businesses relate to each other? Well, families work for the businesses, so they provide labor, and also they buy the products that are manufactured by the companies, so they purchase these goods. In exchange, what do businesses do for families? They pay salaries to the workers in exchange for their labor, and sell the goods that they made to the families also. So these relationships, these arrows form between or among these three agents form the economic circuit. If one of these arrows fail, so for example, if the companies don't pay taxes, or if the companies don't pay the salaries to the families, the economic circuit doesn't work. The economic circuit doesn't work and the economy goes down. Boom. So it is very important that these arrows work perfectly in order to have a healthy economy. So, as a summary, the economic activity are all the tasks to obtain products and services to satisfy human needs, and we can classify them, or within the economic activity we can make several classifications. The factors of production, which are the elements needed to carry out the economic activity. They are the natural resources, human resources, and capital. The economic sectors, the group of economic activities, primary sector, secondary sector, and tertiary sector. And finally, the economic agents, the subjects that carry out the economic activity. And they are the companies, the families, and the state. And the relation between all of them is called the economic circuit. The second part of this unit is the economic systems. And the economic systems, what is an economic system? Is the way a country produces, organizes, and distributes the goods and services. So it's the way a government or a state carries out its own economic activity. And we have three main economic systems nowadays. The most important one is capitalism. That is why I showed you a picture of the New York Stock Exchange in Wall Street. The capitalist or market economy is a system based on the free market economy, in which you have freedom to produce whatever you want or to acquire the goods you want, and the prices are determined by the law of supply and demand. This is also the New York Stock Exchange, and this is the most important. This is how the prices are set. The supply is the amount of goods that the system is that the producers offer to the market. The demand is the quantity of goods that the people is asking for. So if there is a balance, the prices are going to be stable. But if there is, for example, a lot of supply but very low demand, the prices are going to drop because nobody wants to buy this supply. What happens if the supply is very scarce but the demand is very high? Many people many people are going to try to buy these scarce resources, so its price is going to be rocket high. And the main goal of this system is to balance both supply and demand. And also the third important feature of the economic, or the second important feature of the capitalist economy or market economy, is the private property of the means of production. Most of the production is held by private properties. And here you have the most important ones in the world: classified by revenue in this case or by market capitalization in this other case. There is no one in Spain. Boo. And all of this was theorized by first time with by this guy, which is Adam Smith, and his most important book is this one, The Wealth of Nations. The other system is the socialism, is the socialist system, or the planned economy. In this system, both economy and production are planned by the state. The state controls all the characteristics, all the features of the economy. It determines what is going to be produced, how many units, and what is going to be the price for that goods. And also the state owns every mean of production. All the companies are state-owned. There is no private property. And right now the only 5 remaining socialist countries are these 5: Cuba, China, Vietnam, Laos, and North Korea. These 5 which have a communist regime. And this was theorized, this communist system, socialist system. The most important type of socialism, which is communism, or Marxism, was theorized by Karl Marx and this is one of his greatest book, The Capital. And finally, we have a mixed system, which is a variation of the capitalist system, in which we have a capitalist system with some intervention of the state. So it's a hybrid between capitalism and socialism, but mostly capitalism. For example, this happens in Spain. In Spain we have a capitalist system, we have a free market, but the state intervenes sometimes, for example, fixing the prices, or with public companies, such as, Renfe, Correos, Televisión Española, etc. And the last one is subsistence economy, and this system takes place in the least developed areas of the world, and it's a system based on self-consumption. So you produce the goods that you need in order to survive. So they produce for their basic needs, for example, the food or clothes or houses. They all do that for themselves. It is not, this type of economy is not oriented to the market, just for self-consumption. For example, the land working before, or this guy with the loom. So, as a summary, the economic systems, the way the economic activity is carried out, we have 3 main systems: capitalism with free market, private property of the means of production, and low state intervention. If it is higher, it is called mixed economy. Socialism with the planned economy, the state determines every feature of the economic activity, and there is no private property because all the companies are state-owned. Finally, the subsistence economy, orientated to self-consumption and to meet the basic needs. And we find it in low developed areas. And talking about these areas, we are going to go in this last point of the unit with the economic areas around the world. So we can divide the world in different economic regions according to their economic power or their degree of development, and we can group countries in very different ways. Well, right now the world economic leader is the United States, but there are some other countries that are trying to beat their hegemony, for example, European Union or China, and that's it. So the main groups that we are going to see are these ones. Okay, you have them in your textbook, but they are not the only ones, and we can group the countries in very different ways, as you can see here. So, for example, we have the world. First, we have before going into them, the world economic leaders, the Western countries here: United States, Canada, European Union, Japan, and Australia. Then These are the ones with the most economic influence all over the world. Then we have the Asian tigers, the brown countries, which are South Korea, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Singapore, which is here. And these are emerging countries that have a great technological developments and have an economy very focused on the technological production. Also, we have the big five of the emerging countries that have economy which is rapidly growing, and the most important one are the BRICS, which is an acronym for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. These five countries are the leaders of the middle countries, the countries that are emerging, that have very competitive economies but cannot compete yet with the developed countries. And these are the five most important ones. We have also a very important group, which are the oil exporting countries grouped in this OPEC, okay, which is the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. These are the red ones, the most important one being Saudi Arabia. And they are important because petroleum is the most used energy source all over the world, and they can control several parts of the economy. And finally, the rest of the world are the underdeveloped areas, and they are mostly located here in Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa, and some areas of Asia and some areas of South America. And they have their main economic activities are mostly in the primary sector, and they have a lot of potential development. So some pictures. Western world, this is London, the head of the European capitalism. This is the city of London. This is Hong Kong in Asia, part of the Asian tigers. Singapore, part of the Asian tigers. Shanghai, China, part of the BRICS. This is Dubai in the United Arab Emirates with the Burj Dubai. This is a country member of the OPEC, and this is Vietnam, which is part of the underdeveloped world. These rice harvesters. So the economic areas of the world, we have the world economic leaders, the Asian tigers, these four countries, the BRICS, these five countries, the most important emerging economies, remember, the oil producer countries, members of the OPEC, headed by Saudi Arabia, and the underdeveloped areas, Africa, Asia, and Sub-Saharan areas of the world. And this is the end. So, bueno, como que se acabó. Bueno, espero que os haya ayudado este vídeo, que se está haciendo de noche, y para cualquier duda ya sabéis, correo electrónico, aula virtual o Instagram, Twitch, que lo tengo aquí abajo en la caja de descripción. Muchas gracias por haberte pasado y nos vemos en el próximo. Adiós.